It's a pleasure having you here on Joy News Prime this evening. Now, this is cheap politics, the words of the Elembele Member of Parliament, Emmanuel Ama Kofi Boah, as he clashes with the DCE for the area, Kwesi Bonza, over who to fix some deplorable roads in his constituency. This follows the following video captured the latest altercation between the MP and DCE for the area.
Yo, blah, nature, come with you. Yeah, I think I'm going to copy out. I do. Honorable. Don't start. What will happen? Honorable. Is it motorable? But you don't know it's a contract. Is it motorable? You don't know it's a contract. Is it motorable? Don't you know it's a contract? Is it motorable? And is a contract. It's the same thing. Yes, so you know what it's so why did you buy fuel for the contractor to fix the road? Are you sick? Look at what you're saying. But you are taking.
Now, the Member of Parliament for Elembele, Emmanuel Ama Kofi Boah, joins us via Zoom for more on this story. Honorable, what caused this altercation between you and the DCE? Honorable, kindly unmute your device so we can hear you. Hello, Honorable?
Yeah. Yes, good evening.
Good evening. So,
how are you?
I'm fine. So I was asking, what caused this particular altercation between you and the DCE?
Well, I know as a member of parliament, the usual challenge for every member of parliament has to do with the deplorable state of our roads. And then the pressure on the constituents to make sure that it's fixed. I faced that situation yesterday. We are in a period of Kundum Festival. This road from a place called Enyinase to all the way to Telekubuga is really in a bad shape. I'm aware that the road is under contract. It's been under contract for over 2.5 years. But the contractor is owed over 15 million Ghana cedi. The contractor has demobilized. So I had to engage the contractor. I engaged them. And after extensive discussions, they agreed that they will reshape the road. I engaged the assembly member in the area, who then informed the DC. So when they started work, the assembly member called me that the DC has called the contractor that he should stop work. In fact, I called the DC and he confirmed that he's on his way to that site to stop. And I asked him why. He said, no, they should stop the work because the road is under contract. I said, but it's under contract. It's been under contract for 2.5 years. And it is really in a bad shape. Our people are suffering. We as leaders have a responsibility to do something about it. Frankly, I had to go there, and when I went there, indeed, the DC was there, and that was what you saw on the tape. Clearly. I mean, it was obvious, and you could see it from the people around. That it was shocking to me that the DC, whose primary responsibility it is to ensure that these roads are fixed, was actually fighting me, the member of parliament. And let me make it clear, the DC is my opponent. He has tried to unseat me as a candidate for the last 3 elections. So it was obvious to me that this DC is basically looking at everything in the political lens. And I'm telling him, look, the politics must stop at the watershed. There are things that are not political. When our people are going through the things we are doing, I mean, what is wrong? When the same contractor, in fact, I didn't go for a new contractor. The same contractor has agreed to reshape the road. So what you saw there was my sense for trying to help reshape the road. That's all it was.
Okay. All right, so
thank you.
On this particular issue, what do you think is the way forward? Have you been able to smoke the peace pipe, you and the DC, so as to advance development of the area?
We'll continue to shape. I think he realized that what he did was, frankly, not acceptable. And frankly, that the contraction, the reshaping must go on. And I'm happy that the reshaping is going forward.
Okay, thank you so much for speaking to us here on Joy News Prime. Now, joining us now is a local governance expert, Dr. Eric Oduro. Doc, what do you think is the cause of this tension between the DCE and the MP? Because this is not the first time this is happening. We know in Chiobodon we had similar situation some weeks back. Why is this particular incident, why does it keep occurring?
Thank you very much. And I think, good evening to our viewers and listeners. I think the Honorable MP gave you a clue that the current MP has been his opponent trying to unseat him for the past 3 elections. So to start with, I can read some political undertone to this whole issue. But I also think that the MP is a member of the Assembly. In fact, when you look at the Local Governance Act, every MP, you are supposed to be a member of the Assembly with no vote. So I was also expecting that when the MP realized that the project is delaying, the people are suffering, he could have engaged the chief executive instead of engaging the assembly member for the area. And then they could have agreed on even how to proceed, because this is something that is going to inure to the benefit of the good people of the Elembele area. So I think that was the gap that created the problem. But I want to believe there is a political undertone. What the two of them need to do is to put their heads together to plan and promote development in the area, because the MP has a responsibility of lobbying for projects to the area. The chief executive has a responsibility of also leading the assembly to bring development to the area. So the two of them cannot fight, because if they don't put their energies together, it is the people who would suffer. I would urge the two of them to put the politics aside and work in harmony. But I can also see a contracting issue there, because if the project has already been awarded to a contractor and the contractor has demobilized from site and government is owing the contractor, the question then would be, what will be its implications on the existing contract if they do the grazing? You know, so it has all kinds of implications. But I think that it will require the two of them to sit down and then resolve it. They are the two leading leaders of the area that will have to join forces to bring development to the area. But I think that the MP should have engaged the chief executive, not an assembly member. That is a bit that I think didn't go on well. I'm sure if he had engaged the chief executive, the two of them would have put their heads together. But they should put politics aside. Like you said, I'm happy the MP indicated that, look, they should rise beyond the politics and join forces to bring development to the people in the Elembele area.
All right, so beyond the Elembele and the Chiobodon areas, we know the political season is approaching, and so we are likely to witness some of these things, especially where the DCEs are also interested in becoming MPs. What do we need to do as a country to actually put a stop to this so we can advance development of our country?
I think each of them must realize that they have a development objective and they owe the citizens a responsibility to bring development. They should put their politics aside. These things cannot be regulated. It is extremely difficult for you to regulate that behavior or those behaviors, because naturally, once they are opponents in a political game, one would be expected to outwit the other. So they should just play the game fairly. So at the end of the day, citizens will not suffer. But a lot would also depend on citizens. They should demand accountability. They should demand development. They should demand that the leaders they have voted for and those they have put in office bring the needed development. And I also humbly appeal to both political parties and all other political parties going into the elections. They should not put their politics above national interest. They should try as much as possible to put the interest of the citizens ahead of everything.
All right.
And I'm sure we will be able to make it if they join forces. But every MP must know that they are members of the assembly, and if they want to bring development projects, they should engage the chief executive, and I think things will work out.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eric Oduro-Osai. He is a local governance expert. We are so grateful for your time. Now, moving on, it appears Ghana may be wrongly computing the fishing season in Ghana. That is the concern of some fishermen at La Abese in the Lada de Kotopon municipality. The fishermen say they are unable to make any meaningful catch at sea despite religiously observing the close season or the close fishing season. Now, the close season is observed as a way of reducing fishing pressure on stocks when they are most productive in terms of allowing the fish a chance to lay their eggs to replace the most population or the lost population due to fishing and other natural causes. But right after the season, fishermen are still unable to make a catch, complaining about the phenomenon with the price of fish already soaring. Ramat Bashiru reports.
Prices of fish is soaring as the commodity is in short supply. At Saide's Kenke joint, fish is costing an arm and a leg, and consumers are worried.
It's from 8 cedis. You won't get fish for 7 cedis, 6 cedis, not even talking of 5 cedis. So fish are very expensive now in Ghana.
I bought a little kenke with fish. I tell you the price of the fish, and secondly, they do count. They do count.
6 cedis, that's the red fish, and the kpala is 15 cedis, and this one is 8 cedis, 6 cedis, 8 cedis, and 7 cedis.
It is Saturday morning at La Abese Fishing Center in the Labadi community here in the Greater Accra region. Fishermen here are frustrated about the unusual state of their catch, which is already threatening their livelihoods. The chief fisherman, Henry Odoi-Peku, says despite the close fishing season, they are not making enough catch whenever they visit the sea.
The time of closing season is not going well with our fishing. If we don't argue with the government, but what we are saying is the time of July is our bumper harvest. Therefore, the time should be reversed to maybe June. The closing season may be reversed to June rather than July.
The pollution of the sea has also been cited as one of the causes of the gradually depleting fish stock in the sea, with some species going extinct. According to them, fish resources are threatened by human activities, including pollution, which has prevented them from fishing for the past 1 week.
Every plastic waste from hinterland drop to the shore anytime it rains. Therefore, you will see the pollution of the plastic, and it affects us most. Could you believe I will go for fishing, but return with plastic instead of fish?
This level of pollution is changing the marine ecosystem and affecting fish reproduction. Isaac Nunu is repairing a fishing net that he says was damaged after getting entangled with plastic waste. The sea is now filled with plastic waste. We don't even get fishes. You spend so much money on premix fuel and you go to the sea and make no significant catch. Our premix fuel is not even being supplied regularly. Isaac Tete, the canoe repairer of the fishermen, says the Chinese trawlers continue to commit acts of illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing in Ghana, hence the loss of income for artisanal fishermen. The Chinese are engaging in illegal fishing. They are using such high lights to catch all the fishes. We are pleading with government to deal with this situation. Fishermen are struggling. Odoi Atiku was hoping to go fishing, but is already having second thoughts as previous expeditions have simply not yielded any positive result.
The transit 2 weeks, about 1 day, a week, 1 day.
Water resources, including fishes, constitute an integral part of the ecosystem, supporting human lives across the world. And in Ghana in particular, fish is perhaps the most popular and cheap source of protein. But with these challenges threatening the efforts of farmers, state actors must begin to move in now and act. Ramat Bashiru's report for Joy News, read to you.
Now, while May inflation has declined to 40.1%, inflation for seafood remains about 70%. Isaac Kofi has been studying the data and joins me in studio with more. Kofi, walk us through this particular data.
Also, there you have it on our smart wall. So headline inflation is 40.1%, but inflation for fish, which is the sea fish that we're talking about in the feature or the report, is around 76.8%.
Wow.
This simply means that as of last year, if you were using 100 cedis to buy maybe a fish,
a carton of fish, for instance.
Exactly. Now you need around 180 cedis. That is the at least situation.
Wow.
It could be more than this because this is the headline figure or the average figure.
Okay.
So headline inflation is 40, but inflation for fish is around 76.8%. So if you are a lover of fish and you consume a lot of fish, you attest to the fact that the price has gone up if you compare this to last year.
Yeah.
And let's move to the next slide that shows you the comparative analysis between the fish and then headline inflation. If we can move to the next slide, you see some huge difference between the headline inflation and then, you know, the fish inflation, for instance.
Okay.
The fisher folks were complaining about the fact that July is their bumper harvest, and so they should be allowed to go to sea in July, probably in June. But we understand the close season starts in July.
Okay.
Now, if you can show that on the screen right now, the disparity between the headline inflation and fish inflation, just look at it.
Yeah.
The red one is inflation for fish, and the yellow one is inflation, the general inflation.
Okay.
Look at how high, and the gap between the headline inflation and
That
fish
is.
inflation, the gap is very, very wide. And this is the point where we started closing the season, and look at it. It's around 88%, a slight decline to 76.8%. But generally, you can
it's
compute
really high.
an average about 80%.
Okay.
80, that is the inflation rate for fish between February 2023 and August 2023.
While the general inflation remains
General
around.
inflation is around 40, 50, and then 41%.
So that appears to be twice.
Absolutely, twice. So it means that, if you are a lover of fish and you consume fish a lot, you may be computing your own inflation and say, come on, inflation cannot be 40 because if I buy fish, it's more than 40%. So we've done the disaggregation for you to understand why, your fish, the price, now you need close to maybe 200 cedis to buy the same fish that you used to buy 100 cedis last year, 2022. Yeah,
all right.
So that is it.
Thank you so much. But still on this inflation issue, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta in the 2023 media budget review slashed Ghana's GDP growth rate from 2.8% to 1.5%, signaling that the economy was expected to grow, but not as initially projected. Now, the Ghana Statistical Service latest GDP figures show a decline in growth of the Ghanaian economy, with the industry sector recording negative growth again. Now, the economy is in the second quarter of 2023 slowed to about 3.2%, which is relatively smaller than what was recorded last year. Construction, electricity, and manufacturing subsectors are actually contracted. Now, government statistician Professor Samuel Kwabin-Enim also revised the sector and the growth rate earlier, saying 4.2% to about 3.3%.
The second quarter of 2023, from both an oil perspective and a non-oil perspective, the economy grew by 3.2%. From an oil perspective, the 3.2% that we've recorded for the second quarter of 2023 indicates a 0.1 slowdown relative to what we recorded in the first quarter of 2023. In the first quarter of 2023, the economy grew by 3.3%, and in the last quarter of 2022, the economy grew by 3.7%. Over these three quarters, the 3.2 indicates the lowest growth rate, as the economy grew by 3.7 in the last quarter of 2022 and 3.3 in the first quarter of 2023. From a non-oil perspective, the 3.2 growth rate that has been recorded for the second quarter of 2023 indicates a slowdown relative to the last two quarters. As from a non-oil perspective, in the last quarter of 2022, the economy grew by 4.3%. increased marginally to 4.4% in the first quarter of 2023 and a dip of 1.2 percentage points to 3.2 growth rate non-oil perspective for the second quarter of 2023. Growth rate across the different sectors, the agricultural sector for the second quarter of 2023 grew by 6.0%, and also the services sector grew by 6.3% for the second quarter of 2023. While we saw a growth rate for agricultural and services sector, respectively 6.0 and 6.3% for the second quarter of 2023, the industry sector contracted by 1.9% for the second quarter of 2023. These growth rates relative to the average for the period 2014 quarter 1 to second quarter 2023, we see increases for the second quarter of 2023 for agricultural and services sectors, while we see a slowdown or a contraction for the industry sector as it contracted by 1.9% relative to an average of 3.9% for the industry sector for the period first quarter 2014 to second quarter 2023.
My colleague Isaac Kofi has been studying the data and joins me in studio with more. Kofi, give us a sector-by-sector analysis of this particular growth.
Well, it's here again, 3.2%. If you compare this 3.2% to what we recorded 2022, around this same time was around 3.5%. That's why we say there's a slight, in contraction in terms of the economy. There's a slight, a slowdown in the economy. But if you look at the sector-by-sector analysis, the industry sector again records, a contraction or a shrinking of about, 1.9% in the second quarter of 2023. If you do a subsector breakdown, and these are the subsectors, they are the backbone of the economy. Look at construction. There was a shrinking of 11.7%. Electricity, water supply, management and remediation activities, 3.1%, contraction. Manufacturing also contracted by 0.5%. The services sector increased by some 6.3%, and the agriculture sector also increased by some 6%. So there you have it. There's some slight decline, but this is still positive. We are still within the range, and it's very good. I mean, it's just about 0.1% decline, but it's still very significant. But what you have on the screens right now tells you that the Ghanaian economy has, slowed down a bit by just some 0.1% in the second quarter of 2023.
Thank you, my colleague Kofi for those details. We are crossing over to the CMG event live.
We shouldn't press it. Okay. As the MC rightly said, we know our level. So, on behalf of the Chartered Institute of Marketing Ghana, and on behalf of my colleagues here, we hereby launch the 2022 Customer Satisfaction Survey duly launched. %98 threshold, not too bad, but of course the devil is in the detail. And we have 5 banks that scored above the threshold, which is something to be proud of. We as banks take very good notice of this outcome, and I'm sure the banks will individually request their own reports and use that to improve on our scores going forward.
So it's been launched, and I'll call on our members to now make the formal request. Muniru, you are here. I'm sure you'll be making the request this evening for that of GCB, so that our friends from the big house will know how we performed in order to improve our performance going forward. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ewa, probably I would invite you not to take your seat because you will be back with me only very shortly. In the midst of all of what we've been talking about, especially in the banking sector, from different categories, I am going to chip in a bit into your closing remarks. From last year and the sort of reports we got from the banking sector, the DDEP obviously was the big elephant in the room. And now there is another knock on your door. I am only wondering into the future. If they go knock knock and come in, I'm wondering what impact that will have on some of these figures. I mean, relatively. Only time will tell. Over to you, Mr. Ewa, Mr. Chairperson, with your closing remarks.
Thank you. And I stand on the existing protocols. This exercise, you all agree with me, is a very important one. And personally, I'm excited that we have these performance benchmarks, particularly on customer satisfaction.
That was the launch of the 2022 CIMG Customer Service Survey report. We'll take a break. We'll return with more. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Joy News Prime with me, Carlos Caloni. Now, to some other story, the latest weapons and ammunition baseline assessment conducted by the United Nations Institute for Disarmament has uncovered a worrying trend of high ammunition circulation in Ghana and other West African countries, which poses significant danger to peace and security. The West African sub-region has in recent times grappled with the challenge of military takeovers and widespread activities of violent extremism, which is highly associated with the arms race confronting the region. In a bid to tackle the situation, the Economic Community of West African States is exploring close collaboration with the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research, as stakeholders drawn from ECOWAS member states converge in Accra to discuss the way forward. There's more in the following report.
The 2023 Annual Regional Seminar on Disarmament and Non-Proliferation Instruments brought together government officials, law enforcement agencies, ammunition regulatory authorities, and other stakeholders drawn from member states of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Key on the agenda is the need to find lasting solution to the worrying trend of huge cache of ammunition and light weapons circulating in West Africa. Director for the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research, Robin Gaes, tells Joy News that there is a worrying trend of ammunition circulating in West Africa. He is therefore calling for the development of a framework that will address the challenge.
It can only happen if you work at all of these levels, and they all interlink with one another. And that's really what we're trying to support as a UN think tank entity. The multilateral level, linking it to regional efforts, understanding what is happening in countries, what are the specific problems that need solutions, so that we don't have, lofty debates, but really problem-oriented debates. And then bringing it back to the multilateral level and hopefully integrating it into treaty discussions or even treaties and instruments going forward.
And let's talk about your initial findings. What are some of them and what are some of the key factors going into the engagement?
Yeah, so we, since 2016, have been conducting in West Africa weapons and ammunition management baseline assessments. And we found that effective weapons and ammunition management in countries can do a great deal in mitigating drivers of conflict and armed violence. And so we've developed a whole methodology and different tools that we bring to states, discuss with states, and then together we try to implement them in support of the states at the national level, really with the aim to enhance their weapons and ammunition management policies.
The regional body ECOWAS says it acknowledges the necessity of reinforcing its regional arms control agreement and is working assiduously to dedicate substantial technical and financial resources to support arms control policies in the region. Abayomi Adeomi is Programs Officer at the Arms Control and Disarmament Department of ECOWAS.
It's very important for us, and I would like to highlight that the ECOWAS region is not alone in the challenge, it's a global challenge. Okay, so arms proliferation is not peculiar to the ECOWAS region. We have an harmonized approach to this, and we need to ensure that our member states are well equipped, And you mentioned the issue of cross trafficking, and you are aware that the region has a lot of, in fact, the number of illegal borders that we have are more than the formal borders that we have. So to ensure also that our border agents and agencies are well equipped to be able to confront these challenges. So to put in perspective, regional perspective is to ensure that members are well equipped to be able to confront this phenomenon.
Ghana's National Commission on Small Arms and Light Weapons says although the country remains relatively stable, the continuous influx of ammunition and light weapons from other West African countries could jeopardize the security and stability of the nation if the situation is not addressed immediately.
We do not have the issue directly in Ghana, but when you look at, let me say, our neighboring countries, the issue persists. And if we do not take care and secure our borders, if we are not security-minded enough, we are going to have a strong influx of these weapons coming into the country, which we do not want.
After 3 days of brainstorming, stakeholders at this meeting are expected to enhance the weapons and ammunition regulatory regime in West Africa.
Let's do some politics, where the Elections Committee of the New Patriotic Party, NPP, has defended its recently superdelegate election, describing it as fair and transparent. According to the committee, the process was consultative and open to the aspirant, and any aggrieved person could have used the internal structures to table their concerns for redress. It will be recalled that one of the front-runners, Alan Tramontan, aborted his flag bearership ambition, alleging the election was strategically and tactically skewed in favor of one aspirant. But Vice Chairman of the NPP Elections Committee, Abankwah Iboah, insisted the exercise was fair and transparent. Samuel Mbura of our political desk have more in the following report.
After a brief meeting with all aspirants, the Elections Committee spelled out the modalities for the November 4 Congress and indicated that there is room for any aspirants to tender in their grievances. Mr. Abankwah Iboah, who is the Vice Chairman of the Elections Committee, said the November elections will be conducted in a transparent, free and fair manner. There will be an exemplary one in the country.
To the best of my knowledge, I do not think the process was not fair. The process on 26th August was very fair, and I believe for one or two incidents that took place, I think even the aspirants, when they came here, some of them came to congratulate us for the work we did. So to the best of my knowledge, I think the processes, the guidelines, everything that we put in place was as fair as practicable. The one or two incidents that took place have been addressed. That's what I'm saying, a report has been given. So that will be taken care of. But on the whole, I believe it has been a very good election on 26th. We believe on the 4th November, the party will prove everybody wrong, and that the members of this nation, the party, will make sure that that election will be an exemplary one for all other political parties to emulate.
Mr. Fred Owari, who speaks for the Vice President's campaign team, says they are optimistic that the elections will be conducted free and fairly.
We've always worked hard to win the elections. We're not winning it because we're not doing any work. If you follow the campaign trail, you see there is one candidate who's been to every constituency without having cluster meetings. It's a lot of hard work. We start early in the mornings, sometimes as early as 6 we're on the road. As late as 1 a.m. We're now retiring to go to bed. And so it's been a very difficult process. We continue to do that and making sure that we touch base with every of the 200,000 plus delegates and take our message to them.
on the part of Mr. Francis Adainimo, he expects that the elections will be conducted in a fair manner for all aspirants. He also wants the media not to limit the contest to only 2 aspirants.
We've had people who said they are posters, they come out with their polls, and they don't like. Those polls do not reflect on the day of election. So why not? I'm in the race to win. Who goes to the race not to win? You have to win. You have to work hard and secure victory. I mean, let me give you a typical example. In a 100-meter race where Usain Bolt is one of the sprinters and other sprinters, would they abandon the race that because Usain Bolt is in the race, they are abandoning the race? They will go. You never know what will happen to Usain Bolt by the time he gets to the 50-meter mark. He may pull out.
The Elections Committee of the NPP is expected to provide the voters register to all aspirants before the 4th of October, so that any aspirants who has grievances will have them addressed before they go into the main elections. Reporting for Joy News, Samuel Mbura, NPP headquarters, Asylum Down.
We'll take a break. We'll return with showbiz. Please stay with us.